Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's get started. It was just another typical Friday evening in our quiet Boston suburb. Laura and I had made it a habit to host our neighbors for dinner parties every few weeks. We'd grill up some steaks, open a few bottles of wine, and catch up with our neighbors. We had a glass of decent red wine and caught up over the usual neighborhood gossip as I set the patio table. I could hear Laura's warm laughter drifting in from the living room where she was entertaining Diane and Mark from across the street. Laura had a gift for making people feel welcome and at ease. I smiled, thinking how lucky I was to be married to such a lovely woman. When our other neighbors, Jack and Melissa, arrived, we all settled on the patio. The early summer evening was pleasant, the conversation flowed easily, and I sipped my Cabernet, feeling utterly content with my charmed life. Little did I know that illusion of domestic bliss was about to shatter into a million pieces. Laura taught a couple of yoga classes each week at a studio downtown. On this particular Friday, I'd planned a surprise for her by stopping in with her favorite flowers from the grocery store. Maybe we could grab an early dinner after her class and have a quiet night to ourselves. I pulled up to the studio around 5. I got there at 5 p.m. I got there at around 5:00 p.m. I noticed a bouquet of sunflowers on the passenger seat as I turned off the engine and picked them up. I heard faint music and laughter spilling out from the propped-open studio door. It seemed strange to me that Laura's class should be over by now, so I peeked through the window. What I saw nearly made me drop the sunflowers in shock. There was my wife, tangled up with a tall, muscular man. His hands were grasping her curves as they kissed with an intensity that left no doubt this was far more than just a casual encounter. I shouted, "This is just an innocent fling, Laura." I pushed through the door and they broke apart. Laura's eyes went wide with panic. The man, who looked like an arrogant jerk, scrambled to pull his shirt on. "Jonathan, I can explain," Laura sputtered, hastily straightening her clothes. "Explain what?" I shot back, my voice shaking with rage and humiliation. "That you've been screwing around behind my back with this piece of garbage?" The man opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "Don't bother with your history," I said. I turned an icy glare on Laura. I told her we'd discuss this at home. I stormed out. Petals from the crushed sunflowers spilled across the floor like splashes of yellow blood. In that moment, I felt like I'd lost 3 years of marriage. Our vows seemed mocked by the sight of Laura's infidelity. The drive home passed in a blur of rage and disbelief. How could she? The Laura I knew, the woman I built a life with, would never do something so deceitful and cruel. Yet the images replayed in an agonizing loop. Her limbs. I also saw them together, their bodies moving together in a way that was completely out of character for Laura and me. I went into house and started breaking things. I smashed wedding photos, broke some crystal vases, and even smashed some diplomas. When I finally stopped, I collapsed onto the sofa and started thinking about revenge. At first it was just a small spark, but it quickly grew into a much bigger idea. Laura had betrayed me in the worst way. She deserved to lose everything: our home, her financial security, her reputation, and her boyfriend. I'd make sure he paid a devastating price, and soon. A ruthless plan took shape. The first icy tendril of justice for the profound hurt Laura had inflicted the next morning. I dressed calmly and headed into the city to the bank where we held our joint accounts. With a few deft keystrokes, I locked Laura out, canceling her debit and credit cards. "I'm getting a divorce," I told the confused bank manager with a tight smile. "She'll need to open her own accounts from now on." I then called our landlord from the car to tell him that Laura's indiscretions had dissolved our marriage. She has 30 days to vacate the apartment, per her lease agreement. The man was so oblivious that he offered condolences, which I accepted through gritted teeth. I could only imagine Laura's confusion and panic when her cards declined and the notices arrived. I also had to leave our upscale complex, which was equally satisfying but more complicated. Laura's deadbeat boyfriend worked as a personal trainer at one of the city's most prestigious gyms. His clients included business executives, celebrities, and even local politicians. They wouldn't take kindly to his indiscretions, so I unearthed Adam's client roster and contact details. I sent an anonymous email with attached photos proving his affair. I started with his highest-paying clients. "Is this the type of man you want mentoring your family?" The email said that his unscrupulous behavior and inability to honor commitments make him unfit for his profession. Within days, My phone was ringing nonstop. The gym manager told me that Adam had resigned. He'd been heard through the grapevine to have personal issues. I laughed darkly. Personal issues didn't begin to cover the professional devastation. I'd revealed one by one Adam's panicked clients had dropped him until the gym had no choice but to cut him loose. His career was ruined, and his future prospects shattered. Revenge tasted sweeter than I could have imagined, yet no amount of financial or career sabotage could placate Laura, who had inflicted this on him. Justice demanded that he be made to look utterly ridiculous before our friends and neighbors. The annual neighborhood block party proved a perfect opportunity. I procured an old camcorder from a pawn shop. I edited together some damning footage from the yoga studio security camera. The video made it clear that Laura and her boyfriend had been up to no good that evening. I waited until most residents had arrived, full of hot dogs and beer, as the sun went down. I fired up an outdoor projector I'd rented and streamed the video onto the side of Jack's house. The audio was loud in the dark. Laura's moans soon pierced the stunned silence, followed by gasps. And we also played some footage of our neighbors, which played on for endless torturous minutes until the lights came on and fully illuminated the crowd's disgust and shock. I stood there, meeting Laura's gaze across the yard, and in that moment, she grasped the full extent of my vengeance. I showed her the depths to which I would go to demolish her world. For months, she and Adam would remain social outcasts, with their reputations and standing in tatters. That was just deserts for their depravity. After the block party, our suburban utopia fell apart. There were awkward silences and furtive glances whenever Laura or Adam showed their faces. Friendships broke down with the more pious neighbors loudly condemning their behavior. "How could you do this to Jonathan?" Diane, my former neighbor, hissed at Laura in the grocery store. "After everything he did for you, you're a disgrace." Laura flinched, cheeks flushing, and quickly abandoned her cart once the sun, our social circle's radiant star, set. She now scurried through town, trying to avoid any disapproving looks. Adam didn't fare any better thanks to my actions. Clients and friends alike had written him off as a bad choice for looking after their families. His only remaining friends were the bar stools at seedy taverns where he drowned his misery. "This is on you, man," he slurred at me one night outside Mackenzie's pub, breath-breathing in cheap whiskey. "You couldn't just let it go." I grabbed his collar, eyes narrowing. "Let it go," I said firmly. "You stuck your filthy pecker in my wife. This is justice, plain and simple. Get out of my face before I put you in the hospital by summer's end." Neither Laura nor Adam could bear walking the sidewalks where they'd once felt at home. Both slunk away in search of an anonymous new beginning. Their reputations were in ashes, and their finances were in ruin. Vengeance, however exquisite, had finally been achieved. I could move on. Over the next year, I licked my own wounds and slowly rebuilt my life from the scorched wreckage. Laura, the divorce was finalized without much fuss. She didn't put up a fight and probably felt too ashamed to contest anything, as the old saying goes. I decided to make a fresh start, free from the pain of betrayal. I moved to a minimalist loft in the city with a view of the Charles River. I picked up old hobbies like hiking and photography, which I'd neglected during my comfortable, complacent previous life. Most importantly, I made a new circle of friends. Couples like Michael and Tina were the kind of people who valued trust and commitment above all else in their own marriages. They had solid moral cores, which was a far cry from Laura's deceptive nature. It was through this renewed social life that I met Emily, an art instructor at a local college. Unlike my former wife, Emily radiated sincerity and substance. There were no egocentric pretenses or desperate bids for attention. She just had a warm, grounded presence that immediately put me at ease. We took things slowly at first, both a bit gun-shy from past heartbreaks. I was still hurting from past heartbreaks, but Emily's kindness and maturity slowly got me to open up. I started to trust her as the winter chill gave way to spring. Emily and I became close, and I watched her simple joy as we picked out furniture and decor for my loft. She was genuinely excited about building a home together, which was very different from Laura was always trying to get me to spend money on fancy renovations and designer stuff to keep up with the Joneses. Emily, on the other hand, liked to keep things simple and modest. She wasn't interested in spending her time in showrooms or looking at want ads. She was happy with our new life together. One April morning, I got a letter from Laura. I recognized the return address right away. My throat tightened as I carried the envelope into the kitchen and opened it. Emily looked up from the chopping board where she was preparing an omelet. "Just a letter from my ex," I said, sitting down at the table. I opened the envelope and my heart started to beat faster at the sight of the handwritten words. "My dearest Jonathan," I read, "I don't know if these words will ever reach you, but I need to try." There were several pages written in Laura's neat handwriting. She poured out her anguished soul, detailing how her world had imploded in the months since our bitter split. She expressed deep remorse for betraying the sanctity of our marriage with Adam, while attempting to explain the destructive impulses that had clouded her judgment at first were still there. But reliving those agonizing memories caused my grip to tighten on the letter, crumpling its edges. Yet as Laura's neat script spilled across the pages, something inside me shifted, almost imperceptibly. There was an infinitesimal loosening of the resentment crushing my heart. She wasn't making excuses, but at last, she was able to express the internal conflicts and painful childhood that had warped her ability to experience genuine intimacy. The affairs, yes, she confessed to others before Adam that they were misguided attempts to fill an insatiable void that she didn't fully understand. "I'm so sorry for shattering your trust in our vows," she wrote, the ink bleeding where teardrops. "Clearly, if I could go back and make different choices, I would in a heartbeat." Her words trailed off, but not before describing her current living situation, a small studio apartment, working double shifts at a diner, and her aspirations to teach yoga. She had hit rock bottom, but was slowly clawing her way back, with the support of her faith and weekly counseling sessions. "I've been going to counseling, and it's helping. I've realized that I'm not asking for us to reconcile, John. I know I obliterated that possibility with my selfishness, but I had to take this chance and beg for your forgiveness to hear from you one last time, so I can close this chapter and move forward in my journey to become a better human." I put the letter down, realizing Emily had been reading it over my shoulder. A few stray tears had stained the paper, but I couldn't tell her or Laura. "Oh, Jonathan," Emily murmured, rubbing my back soothingly. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all that pain, but it sounds like she's really working on herself now." I nodded numbly as much as the words. Old wounds, I sensed a flicker of not quite peace but acceptance. I knew I had to finally respond to let go and move forward, but I felt a lump in my throat. I retreated to the small office, booted up my laptop and began to type, "Dear Laura." After staring at those two words for several minutes, the rest began to unfold with each sentence. I felt the lead weight of resentment dissolving further from my soul, and my fingers flew nimbly across the keys. I acknowledged her remorse and expressed hope that she'd find wholeness and faith in her counseling. However, I also stated that her betrayal had irrevocably shattered any possibility of rekindling our relationship or of us ever regaining it. "I do forgive you, but I also want you to know that I don't hold any ill will towards you. I realize that we're both human and flawed, and that we can both cause immense pain to those closest to us. That's why I don't want you to suffer or be unhappy. I hope that you can find genuine healing and self-acceptance. I can accept what's happened, but I'll always remember how you lied to me and how your selfish actions changed my life. I've moved on and I'm at peace with what's happened, but I'll never forget." I finished with a simple but powerful line. "Take care, Laura. I wish you all the best in your journey. This is goodbye." I felt a huge weight lift off my chest when I sent it. At last, I felt closure over the whole thing. It's been a tough journey, but I'm finally free to embrace my new life and the amazing gift of Emily's love. I'm no longer shackled to my traumatic past. When Emily pecked me tenderly, I could see the finality on my face. I pulled her close and soaked in her tranquil devotion. She represented a fresh start and a vibrant future. She was the polar opposite of Laura's turmoil. With her by my side, I felt reborn. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.